Hey folks, Mark here, and welcome to the sofa. Last time on Drowned Tombs, I painted the Immortals. With that boring troops choice out the way, I can move up in the world, to the Skorpekh, and give them some fancy black hole phase blades. Let's get going. Previously on Drowned Tombs. When I restarted this project, I was still missing a hex mark. Originally, I'd built, converted, and started painting rust on the Skorpekh before losing momentum. This go-round, I'd started with the Immortals. They were now fully painted and only missing their bases. At least I had a bit of a jump start on the Skorpekh though. Anact needed a quick cover-up in a few places I missed last time round, but mostly I could jump straight to the shading. I'm not going to drag everyone through the details again, since they're basically identical to the Immortals, except with more panels, and you can see that in the previous episode. Same process. Rust, shade, black out the marble, realise I hadn't done the metals, paint those, redo the black. Order of operations is definitely a thing, and I suck at it. The marble took ages because of how many panels there were, but for the most part, it was the same as the Immortals. I decided, though, that a model I'd named Wrath of Suns needed to be at least a little more imposing, so in her case, I added a few veins of gold into the initial layers. Once I had shaded and highlighted it, I wasn't liking how dull the veins got, so I added little points of gold back onto it at the end for an extra bit of ore-like sparkle. Then it was back to the regular process. Fibre optic cables, black bits, and then at last the various bits of sea detritus. With all that done and the models looking pretty finished, it was time to deal with those phase blades. I'd picked up some black 3.0 to try out for this, but since I had no idea how it would behave, I decided to do a little test first. I made a very elaborate testing rig by hacking off a random piece of sprue I had lying about, spraying it black, and varnishing one of the arms gloss and one matte. The official guidance for black 3.0 says to paint it over black 2.0, but I wasn't keen on buying a whole other bottle of super black just as primer, which raises the question, why aren't all black paints created equal? Science. There are two main factors that affect the colour you see. The light absorbed by the pigment, and the surface texture. Black absorbs most visible light wavelengths equally, and only reflects something like 10 to 20% of the light back from the surface. Gloss surfaces are smooth, so the light bounces off at an equal angle to the one it hit at. That means you only see the reflection if you're in the exact right position. The rest of the time, you see very little at all. Matte surfaces are rough, so the reflected light is scattered more. This makes the highlights look duller, but the shadows look brighter, greying out the whole piece a little. Super black paints like Black 3.0 absorb something like 99% of light, because the pigment is a lot denser. They're also usually very rough, so what little light does bounce back is scattered and hard to detect. Which, because there's no definition, the eye then interprets as a whole. Question is, would it sit better over blacker looking gloss, or matte, or just straight black paint? It takes a few coats to build up, especially over gloss, but the end result was much the same on all of it. It didn't like sticking to the gloss surface, but the other two seemed pretty similar. So in the end, I painted the blades black, gloss sealed the whole model to protect it, then went back in with the black paint, recoated the blades to give the next layers something to stick to. Once that dried, I built up several layers of black 3.0 gradually, until the panel lines faded away. Partly because the light soaked in, and partly because this is one thick, gritty goop, and it clogs up details. Especially when it's not as effective if you thin it like regular paint. But several long drying times and eye-watering staring sessions trying to find defects in the surface later, I had some holes in space ready to go. Just one last step now to finish off the Skorpekh, and that's the lightning. I'd planned to paint the lightning on, only just before I started, I realised that if it followed the surface, it would give away the shape of the panel lines. So instead, I figured I'd give them their own shape by mixing the pink into texture gel and sculpting the lightning effect in 3D. To give it some extra intensity, I added fluorescent pink to the mix, making this delicious looking goop that I could then paint in rough lightning bolts, trying really hard not to blob it everywhere, because repainting the black would suck. Once that dried, I decided it looked awful. At some point, every project goes through that ugly period, commonly known as the dog ship phase. There's always two choices in the dog ship phase: spray it black and start again, or push on and hope that the worse it looks now, the better the result later. I didn't fancy the start again option, so let's keep going. The first thing I thought needed doing was to turn the random pink worms into more of a cage around the blade. I could then roughly highlight that using pale blue to match the cables, only a lot more of it, and then give it some point highlights of white. That looked roughly like lightning, except it needed a little glow. Some blue OSL around the blade and the orbs, but not on the black itself, would hopefully make it look even more like a black hole. After some more blue and a bit of magenta ink on the edges, I was happy enough to call them done. Which means we're now 9 models down and 4 to go before I can finally finish the combat patrol I started back in the before times. Not gonna lie, getting these done has been a slog. There's a lot of panels, cables and bits, and that black is not the easiest thing to work with. I might be okay with the results though, especially when I look at it all together. But how are other folks feeling about the project? Looking forward to more? Looking forward to it being over? Hopefully I can make both of them happen soon. Then lame gag, fade to black, sorted. Now I just need a lame gag. I'm not usually short on those.